Welcome to the oldest city in America. Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today we are in St. Augustine, Florida, and it is known as the oldest city in America. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of information today. I'm going to take you around and show you some of the sights. It is really a pretty incredible old town. There are some interesting cemeteries, although the most interesting one you can't get into except for 3 hours once a month. But I'll take you by and show you. It's a really interesting place. There's old war forts. There's a lot of really cool stuff here. So we'll take a look and I'll show you what we see. Now in front of me right here is Castillo de San Marcos monument. And this is an old war fort and probably one of the most historic places here in St. Augustine. This was built between 1672 and 1695. So it is pretty, this is a pretty old area here. This place was built before America was really even, before it was America, obviously. This takes you back to the Spanish history of this region. But it's pretty interesting, and it's right on the water here. As you can see, the marina is just right over here. Looks like people are starting to slowly come into work here. That is a wonderful visual. There's St. Augustine right back there. Here's some cannons over here. Now, it's said that they protected St. Augustine from intruders here for over 100 years. It's a pretty incredible place. And just to give you an idea of the size of these walls, walk over here. This would do a pretty good job. People would be able to have lookouts up on the top, and each of these, zoom in up there, each of these spots up here have cannons that they would have used to protect themselves and the fort. Here's a little information here in an old photo from 1893. It says, through treaty, Spain ceded Florida to the United States in 1821. Built to defend the city, the Castillo remained a defensive post when ownership changed. Renamed Fort Marion, the Americans made the Castillo part of the U.S. coastal defense system. They brought the fort's defenses up to date by thickening the seawall, filling in the section of the moat, and building granite and iron semicircular gun platforms. Mounted only 7 feet above sea level, the howitzers and cannons here in the water battery could threaten ships miles away. Pretty incredible. It all happened right here. This is a furnace that they used to use to heat up cannonballs, to fire what they called hot shots at their enemies. Now just imagine, take yourself back into time, 300-400 years. You would be here defending your fort, firing cannons over this wall at incoming ships. I'm assuming that would have been a lookout tower up there. Would have been a pretty good view. Now if you plan to visit, it does cost $15 to go in. Well worth it, but right now they're not open, and I'm not sure what time they open, but this is pretty incredible. But the park is open to the public, and you can walk around outside of the fort free of charge at any time. But this place is pretty massive. These are some of the old streets of St. Augustine. Now they boast some of the oldest streets in America, and actually the oldest street in America. Here we have the oldest wooden schoolhouse in the USA. They do have tours of this. Department of the Interior to certify that this historic building has been selected by the advisory committee. It's pretty neat. They do have tours of that. If you go in here, $7.95 for adults, $6.95 for kids. It is not open yet. As you can see, I got here pretty early in the morning. Nothing is open yet, but that's a perfect time to come by and just take in the history. The fort is right down there, and just over here are some entry gates. And there's a little bit of information over here. It says that this gate was opened in 1739, provided the only access through the defense line on the north side of the Spanish St. Augustine. So this gate is from 1739. If you put that into perspective, just how historic this was before we were even really a country. The fort is over there. All the historic buildings, hotels, shops down this way. Now, when we first got here, I was telling you about an old cemetery that's right in the middle of town, and that would be this right here. Now, it is blocked off, and like I said, it's only open to the public for 3 hours a month. But this is very historic, very old, and I'm going to come back again when this is open and we can get in here, because there's informational plaques for historical names laid to rest in this cemetery, but they also host ghost tours where they highlight this place and they talk about how incredibly haunted this cemetery is. Now, whether or not you believe in that thing, I know a lot of people really believe in it. I know a lot of people think that there's nothing to it. It's one of those kind of things that everybody has their own viewpoint on. But this is, this is I believe the oldest cemetery here in St. Augustine. I'll just walk around it a little bit. As you can see, there's some very old stones in here. There's most of the people laid to rest in here. It seems like it goes from the ones that I can see from the 1700s to like the late 1880s. Looks like here's one here that escaped. Huguenot Cemetery. Hopefully I said that right. But yeah, we'll definitely come back here when we can get in. A lot of history here. There is an informational plaque over here that we'll take a quick look at. It says, we'll zoom in here and see if you can see this. It says, before Florida became a U.S. territory in 1821, this land was owned by Spain. In 1807, parcels of land to the north of the city gate were granted to residents interested in farming. However, as a defense measure, Governor Enrique White set out a specific area to guard against foreign incursions. Each grantee was allowed one small thatched palm sack, but had no claim against the government in case a shack had to be burned as a military necessity. The land was granted to Jose Barrera, who deeded it to Lorenzo Capella in 1819, who sold it to Reverend Thomas Alexander. Now it goes on to say that in July of 1884, the city passed an ordinance forbidding any further burials in both the Tullamado Cemetery and the Huguenot Cemetery. So the last person laid to rest here was 1884. Looks like a really interesting place. But yes, we will come back here and check this place out when it's open. Here's one more look at these gates. This is just incredible to see in person. Pictures don't do it justice. I really doubt video does this justice. But this really is like walking in history. You also can't enjoy the history of St. Augustine without visiting one of their many historic cemeteries. Just over here it says, following the Civil War, the Sisters of St. Joseph came to St. Augustine to teach the liberated slaves. Interred in this holy ground are 6 members of their congregation. And some of these definitely show the age of these cemeteries. As you can see, this one's pretty well worn. And there's another one right behind here. You definitely see a lot of these above ground ones like this here. And this one actually has a tombstone on top of it. Francis Anarel Agatha, it looks like. His wife died June 22nd, 1886. 82 years old. That's a really good lifespan for back then. Even today. And this is a pretty well-known structure here. This is Our Lady of La Leche. The present chapel is the 4th building on this foundation. Erected first in 1615, this shrine of Our Lady fell victim 3 times to war, pirates, and storms. The last reconstruction began in 1918. Here it is. Let's step inside. Well, that concludes a day of history in St. Augustine, Florida. I will come back and do plenty more videos. There is a Ripley's Believe It or Not that I plan to do. Several other haunted locations, cemetery tours. There's a lot coming up. So we will come back here again very soon. And aside from that, thanks so much for watching, and we'll catch you on the next video. Take care, everybody.